Welcome back to our channel, English with Ethan. In this video, we begin the incredible and powerful life story of J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man known as the father of the atomic bomb. His journey is full of brilliance, struggles, moral questions, and a deep connection to science and humanity. This story will inspire you and help you improve your English through meaningful listening. So sit back, relax, and listen till the end. Let's begin. Early life and childhood. The birth of a genius Shay. Robert Oppenheimer was born on April 22, 1904, in New York City, USA. His full name was Julius Robert Oppenheimer, but most people called him Robert. He was born into a wealthy and cultured family. His father, Julius Oppenheimer, was a successful German immigrant who made a fortune in textiles. His mother, Ella Friedman, was an artist who loved painting. From a very young age, Robert showed signs of brilliance. While other children were playing outside, Robert was reading books, lots of them. By the time he was 5 years old, he could already read and write well. He was quiet, serious, and loved learning about everything, especially science. He had few friends as a child. He spent most of his time alone, thinking deeply and exploring ideas. He loved literature, languages, and especially chemistry and physics. He was not like other children. He was unique. He often surprised his teachers with his deep thoughts and fast learning. His mind was always searching for something new. Education. A journey of knowledge. Robert attended the Ethical Culture Fieldston School, a progressive school in New York that focused on ethics, science, and responsibility. This school shaped his early thinking. It taught him to be curious, responsible, and to care about society. He became interested not only in science, but also in philosophy and poetry. After school, he went to Harvard University, one of the best colleges in the world. At Harvard, he studied physics but also read literature, learned languages, and enjoyed philosophy. He graduated in just 3 years, something very few people could do. But Oppenheimer wanted more. He wanted to understand the secrets of the universe. So he traveled to Europe to study deeper physics, especially quantum mechanics, a new field at the time. He studied in Cambridge, England, and then in Germany under famous physicists like Max Born. Germany was the center of science at that time, and Robert quickly became one of the brightest students. A scientist is born in Germany. He earned his PhD in physics at the age of just 23. He was known for his sharp mind and deep understanding of complex theories. His research was focused on quantum theory, how atoms and particles work on a very tiny level. But Robert was not just a scientist. He was also a thinker. He read Sanskrit, studied Bhagavad Gita, and loved poetry and art. His mind worked in many ways, not only logical, but also emotional and philosophical. This made him different from other scientists. He believed science was not just for power. It was for understanding our place in the universe. Return to America. The teacher and thinker. After completing his education in Europe, Oppenheimer returned to the United States and became a professor. He taught at the University of California, Berkeley, and the California Institute of Technology, Caltech. Students loved him. He was a passionate teacher who explained hard ideas in simple words. He challenged his students to think deeply and ask big questions. Even as a teacher, Robert continued his own research. He worked on the most complicated ideas in theoretical physics. But soon, something would happen that would change his life and the world forever. Part 2. The Road to the Atomic Bomb. We move forward into a time of great change. A time of war, danger, and secrets. This is when Oppenheimer was called to lead something the world had never seen before. A weapon so powerful it could end everything. Let's begin this chapter of history and human responsibility. The world goes to war. In the early 1940s, the world was in great trouble. World War II had started. Countries were fighting, cities were destroyed, and millions of people were dying. At that time, the United States learned that Germany might be building a very powerful bomb, an atomic bomb. An atomic bomb is not like a normal bomb. It uses the power from atoms, the smallest parts of everything, to create a huge explosion. Scientists believed it could destroy an entire city in seconds. The US government was afraid. They thought that if Germany made the bomb first, they could win the war and rule the world. So America decided to start its own secret project to build the atomic bomb before Germany. This project was called the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project begins. The US government needed a great scientist, someone who could lead the project and understand very complex physics. They chose J. Robert Oppenheimer. At that time, Oppenheimer was not famous. He had never led a big team or worked on military science. But he was brilliant. He could see the whole picture. He understood physics deeply. And he had something else, the ability to inspire people. Oppenheimer accepted the job. He understood the danger, but he also believed that stopping Hitler was important. He thought building the bomb could help end the war quickly. Building a secret city, Los Alamos. The government gave Oppenheimer a special mission. Build a secret lab in the desert where top scientists could work on the bomb. That place was called Los Alamos, in New Mexico. Los Alamos was far away from cities. There were no big roads, no phones, and no outsiders. It was quiet, secret, and safe. Scientists from all over the country, and even some from Europe, came to work there. Some were famous physicists, others were young students. There were chemists, mathematicians, engineers, hundreds of people. Oppenheimer was their leader. He brought them together, gave them hope, and made them believe in the mission. Even though he had no military background, generals and government officers respected him. They called him Oppie. He worked day and night. He read every paper. He led every meeting. He was fully committed. Science, pressure, and secrets. Working on the atomic bomb was very hard. The science was new. No one had done this before. The pressure was high. People were worried. What if it failed? What if it exploded too early? What if it fell into the wrong hands? Every part of the bomb had to be perfect. The team had to solve big problems. How much uranium or plutonium was needed? How fast should the atoms split? How could the explosion be controlled? Oppenheimer was not only solving science problems. He was also dealing with government pressure, military deadlines, and moral questions. Some scientists started to feel afraid. They realized this bomb could destroy thousands of lives. They asked, "Are we doing the right thing?" But Oppenheimer kept moving forward. He believed that science was powerful and it was his job to use it carefully. He once said, "In some sort of crude sense which no vulgarity, no humor, no overstatement can quite extinguish, the physicists have known sin." These were deep words that showed his inner struggle. The first atomic bomb test. Trinity. After years of hard work, the bomb was ready to be tested. The first test was named Trinity. It was planned for July 16th, 1945, in the desert of New Mexico. Everyone waited in silence. Scientists, soldiers, and leaders stood behind shelters, wearing dark glasses, ready to witness history. At exactly 5:29 a.m., the bomb exploded. The sky turned into fire. A huge light flashed. A giant cloud rose into the air. The ground shook. People stood speechless. It was the first time a human-made explosion had matched the power of nature itself. Oppenheimer watched quietly. He remembered a line from the Hindu scripture Bhagavad Gita that he had studied years before. He whispered, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." These words showed his deep thoughts, not pride, but pain. He knew what had been created could change the world forever. Part 3. The bomb falls, and the burden begins. In the last part, we saw how Oppenheimer and his team created the world's first atomic bomb. It was tested in the desert, and the world changed forever. But the real test of his life began after that moment. In this part, we'll talk about the use of the bomb, the reactions, and the deep emotional journey that followed. Let's begin. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the real explosion. Just a few weeks after the successful Trinity test, the United States made a final decision. They would use the atomic bomb to end the war. On August 6, 1945, the first bomb was dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. 3 days later, on August 9th, another bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. The destruction was beyond imagination. Houses turned to dust. Buildings disappeared. People, men, women, and children, were gone in seconds. More than 200,000 people died as a result of these two explosions. Some died instantly. Others suffered from burns, radiation, and disease. The world saw a level of destruction never seen before. The war ended soon after. Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945. People in the U.S. celebrated. They thought the bomb had saved lives by ending the war quickly. But for Oppenheimer, it was not a moment of celebration. Oppenheimer's guilt and regret. After the bombings, Oppenheimer was called a hero. Newspapers praised him. Leaders called him the father of the atomic bomb. He was invited to Washington, D.C. He met President Harry Truman. But something had changed inside him. He was no longer excited. He felt heavy, quiet, and lost in thought. In a meeting with President Truman, Oppenheimer said, "Mr. President, I feel I have blood on my hands." Truman was shocked and angry. He didn't want to hear this from the man who had just helped end the war. After Oppenheimer left the room, Truman told his staff, "I don't want to see that crybaby again." That was the beginning of Oppenheimer's new battle. Not with science, but with his conscience. From weapon to peace, a new purpose. Oppenheimer returned to Los Alamos, but it was no longer the same. The war was over. The lab was changing. Scientists were leaving. The energy of discovery had been replaced with silence and sadness. Oppenheimer began to speak out. He said that atomic weapons were too dangerous. He believed the world needed to control these weapons before they destroyed everything. He said, "In the interests of humanity, we must work for peace." He joined committees. He gave speeches. He met with world leaders. He wanted to stop the nuclear arms race before it began. He dreamed of a world where nations shared knowledge, not weapons. But not everyone agreed with him. The rise of fear. America turns cold. In the years after World War II, a new fear began in the United States. It was called the Cold War, a time when America and the Soviet Union didn't fight directly, but both tried to become more powerful. The US started to build more bombs, stronger, faster, and deadlier than the first. Many leaders believed Oppenheimer's ideas were too soft. They didn't trust his calls for peace. They wanted to stay ahead of Russia in every way, including nuclear weapons. People started to suspect Oppenheimer. They said he had friends who were communists. They said he was too close to left-wing ideas. Even though there was no proof he did anything wrong, the fear grew. America, once proud of Oppenheimer, started to turn against him. Oppenheimer on trial, a silent attack. In 1954, the US government held a secret hearing. It was not a court, but it felt like a trial. Oppenheimer was asked to defend his past, his friends, and even his personal beliefs. They questioned him about his political history, his letters, his ideas. He answered honestly, but it didn't help. After the hearing, the government took away his security clearance. This meant he could no longer work on secret science projects. He was shocked. He felt betrayed. He had served the country with all his heart. And now he was pushed aside. He didn't go to the press. He didn't scream. He stayed silent. He accepted his fate. But the world watched. Many scientists, students, and thinkers felt deep sadness. They believed America had punished its greatest mind. In this part, we saw how Oppenheimer's greatest success became his deepest pain. He helped end a war, but he couldn't stop the damage that came after. He tried to lead the world toward peace, but fear and politics stood in his way. The story of Oppenheimer is not just about science. It's about power, responsibility, and the price of knowledge. Part 4. Silence, Reflection, and the Forgotten Genius. In the last part, we saw how J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man who built the atomic bomb, was treated unfairly by the same country he helped. He lost his security clearance, his voice in science, and his place in power. But what happened next? Did he give up? Did he fight back? Or did he choose a different path? Let's find out in this emotional part of his story. A quiet life on the island. After the government removed him from his position, Oppenheimer didn't try to return to politics or nuclear science. He accepted what had happened, even though it hurt deeply. He moved to a quiet place, Princeton, where he became the head of the Institute for Advanced Study, a peaceful place for thinkers, writers, and scientists. There, he continued his love for science, not to build weapons, but to ask questions, to learn, and to help others grow. He also spent time on an island, St. John, in the Caribbean. It was calm, far away from newspapers, reporters, and war. He read books, walked on the beach, and thought deeply. He was not forgotten, but he lived like a man who had seen too much, known too much, and now needed rest. Thinking about life and the universe. Oppenheimer had always been more than a scientist. He loved poetry, philosophy, and languages. He could read and speak Sanskrit and enjoyed reading the Bhagavad Gita, an ancient Indian text. He once said that when he saw the atomic bomb explode, a line from the Gita came to his mind. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." This was not just a sentence for him. It was a feeling, a truth he carried. In his later years, Oppenheimer spoke at universities. He talked not only about atoms, but about life, ethics, and humanity. He warned students about the danger of using science without wisdom. He said that knowledge is powerful, but if we don't use it with care, it can destroy us. Mentoring the next generation. Even though he was no longer part of big government projects, Young scientists still came to him for advice. He guided many students, not just in science, but in how to think freely, ask deep questions, and never stop learning. To them, he was not just a teacher. He was a symbol of brilliance, courage, and the pain of being honest in a world full of fear. He told them, "The true value of science is not in building bombs, but in understanding the world and making it better." These words stayed in their hearts forever. Battling illness and inner struggles. In the 1960s, Oppenheimer began to face health problems. He smoked a lot during his life, and this led to throat cancer. Even during his illness, he stayed strong. He continued to read, write, and think. He met with old friends. He didn't complain. He accepted everything, just as he had accepted the pain of the past. He once told a friend, "We do what we can. We leave the rest." His words were simple, but they carried deep meaning. As his body became weak, his mind stayed sharp. He died on February 18th, 1967, at the age of 62. His death was quiet, without loud headlines, but many hearts felt a deep loss. The world begins to understand. After his death, slowly, the world started to look at his life differently. Many people realized that Oppenheimer was not a traitor. He was a man who had tried to stop a world filled with fear. He had spoken out, not for himself, but for all of humanity. Books were written about him. Documentaries were made. Scientists began to talk about his ideas again. Years later, the U.S. government regretted how they treated him. In 2022, the U.S. officially said that removing his security clearance had been unfair and wrong. It was too late for Oppenheimer to hear it. But for the world, it was a moment of truth. Part 5. Legacy that changed the world. In the last part, we learned how J. Robert Oppenheimer spent his final years in peace, far away from power and politics. But his work didn't fade away. Even though he lived quietly, the world kept changing because of what he had created. Now we will see how Oppenheimer's story shaped the future of science, war, and humanity. The age of nuclear power. When Oppenheimer helped build the atomic bomb, he changed human history forever. It was not just a weapon. It was a new kind of power, one that could destroy cities in seconds. After World War II, many countries wanted this power. The nuclear arms race began. The United States, Russia, the United Kingdom, China, France, all worked to build more bombs. But this was not what Oppenheimer had wanted. He believed science should help life, not destroy it. He had warned the world, but the race had already started. Even today, the fear of nuclear war still exists. Countries talk about peace, but they also keep their weapons ready. This fear, this balance of terror, is part of Oppenheimer's legacy. A gift and a warning at the same time. Science after Oppenheimer was not just a builder of bombs. He was also a brilliant teacher, a deep thinker, and a scientist who loved learning. After his time, science grew even faster. New fields were born: quantum mechanics, astrophysics, nuclear medicine, computer science. Many of these fields were shaped by the work Oppenheimer had started. Young scientists studied his ideas and followed his way of asking big, important questions. He had taught them not just facts, but a way of thinking, to be curious, bold, and honest. Even today, when scientists speak about responsibility, they remember Oppenheimer. He showed that being a scientist also means being a human, one who must think about the results of his work. Universities and the spirit of inquiry. Because of Oppenheimer, Many universities became more open to free thinking. He believed in asking questions, even when they were uncomfortable. He believed in discussion, debate, and different opinions. This idea became the heart of many great schools. Students were taught to explore, not just to memorize, to think deeply, not just to follow. He had once said, "There must be no barriers to freedom of inquiry. The pursuit of knowledge must be free." These words helped build the modern culture of research and learning around the world. Books, films, and the rise of a legend. After his death, Oppenheimer became a symbol, not just of science, but of the struggle between power and truth. Writers and filmmakers told his story again and again. Some called him a hero, others called him a tragic figure. But everyone agreed. His life was unforgettable. Books like American Prometheus and movies like Oppenheimer made him known to the new generation. People wanted to understand the man who had once said, "I carry no weight on my conscience, except perhaps that I did not speak more loudly." His story became not just history, but a lesson for leaders, for scientists, for all of us. His message to the world, Oppenheimer's legacy, is not only about bombs or physics, it's also about values. He taught that knowledge must be guided by wisdom, that truth must be protected, even when it is dangerous, and that one voice, even if alone, can still speak for what is right. He also showed us what happens when a society turns against its own thinkers. He was punished for warning about nuclear danger, not because he was wrong, but because people were afraid. This lesson is still important today. We must listen to those who speak the truth, even if it's hard to hear. The seed of peace. In his final years, Oppenheimer often spoke about peace. He didn't just want to stop war. He wanted a world where science was used to heal, help, and bring hope. Today, his ideas live on in nuclear power used for clean energy, medical technology to fight cancer, scientific programs for peaceful development. Many scientists who came after him were inspired to use their work for good, to make the world smarter, safer, and kinder. He had once said, "In the fields of observation, chance favors only the prepared mind." And today, because of him, many minds are prepared, not just to invent, but to care. Part 6. What we can learn from Oppenheimer's life. Now, we are not just finishing a story. We are trying to understand what this story means for us, for you, for me, and for everyone who wants to grow, succeed, and become wiser. Oppenheimer was a genius, but he was also human. He made great achievements, and he made great mistakes. He created something that changed the world, the atomic bomb. But after that, he spent the rest of his life asking, was it right? That is the first thing we can learn from him. 1. Intelligence is not enough. Oppenheimer was smart, but life is more than being smart. We must also be wise. We must ask questions like, is this right? Will this help others? And will this make the world better? True greatness is not only in power, but in purpose. 2. Mistakes do not end our story. Oppenheimer made choices that brought him pain. He lost his respect, his position, and his peace. But he did not give up. He kept teaching, he kept thinking, and in the end, people remembered him, not for his fall, but for his courage to rise again. You too may fall in life, but your story doesn't end there. Keep moving. 3. Be careful what you create. Oppenheimer helped create a weapon that could destroy the world. Later he said, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." He felt deep pain for what he had made. So, When you use your talents, use them for good. Build something that helps others. Create things that bring peace, not fear. Fourth, stand for what you believe. When Oppenheimer spoke against nuclear war, many people turned against him. But he didn't change his words to please others. He stood firm. Even if the world doesn't agree with you, if you believe you are right, be brave. Speak the truth. 5. Learning never ends. Even in his final years, Oppenheimer kept learning. He kept reading, thinking, and exploring new ideas. He never said, "I know enough." So never stop learning. Whether you are young or old, always stay curious. That's the path to growth. Final words, J. Robert Oppenheimer was not a perfect man, but he was a man who thought deeply, felt deeply, and lived a life full of questions, challenges, and meaning. So, what can we take from his story? Be wise, not just smart. Use your talents for good. Learn from mistakes. Stand for truth. And never stop learning. That's how you build a meaningful life. If you enjoyed this full journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with your friends. We'll meet again in the next story. Until then, stay curious, stay strong, and never stop becoming better.